Hello, it is I am Smart, and I think it's finally time that I talk about Star Wars Theory. You see, Star Wars Theory, if you're somehow not familiar, is the biggest Star Wars YouTube channel, and I have some problems with him. And now I occasionally mention this in offhand videos, but I think it's finally time I properly mention him, and just kind of go over what my problem with him is in a video. So in general terms, I often just see him say a bunch of dumb stuff. I mean, he's a very, kind of hateful channel. All of his content in general revolves around the prequels being very good, and the sequels being very, very bad, and everything Disney does is bad. Now, obviously, that's kind of, if you know me, that's pretty much the opposite of how I see things. But, that's the main thing. He gets a lot of attention like that. He doesn't seem like such a bad thing on the surface. It's just, he shares his opinions, and a lot of people like his opinions and agree with his opinions. But there's a bit more to him. And the reason I'm making this now is because I recently saw this clip, and it's so silly. He says a lot of silly stuff in his videos sometimes, and it's fun to make fun of him. I've seen a lot more people making fun of him recently, mainly on Instagram. I've just been seeing clips making fun of him, but the one I saw was this.
Which, yes, Andor is a great show for everyone who attended film school and wants to eat their cheese with a French hat so they can twiddle their mustache at the same time and talk about the Renaissance era and how great things were back then while they sip on their wine from 1922.
So yeah, it's just so ridiculous. Like, what, French hat, like Renaissance? What is he talking about? Like, I'm pretending to be upper class because I like Andor. What does that even mean? It's such a strange argument. I don't even get where he's going with it. But it just shows me so much about his character, if that makes sense. Because it's just like, he's just resorted to this level of like, oh, Andor's so stupid. I hate Andor. All the Andor fans say they're liking it. I like all the prequel Star Wars stuff, and I don't like this new stuff. But to give some context, I want to give you, my history of how I found out about Star Wars. So, because years and years ago, maybe like 2017, I think. I don't remember exactly when I first encountered this channel, but I do remember I watched a video, What If Anakin Liked Sand? You see, back in the day, Star Wars Theory made actual Star Wars theories, stuff like, what if Anakin beat Obi-Wan in Duel on Mustafar, that sort of stuff, theories and speculation about Star Wars, fun stuff, just talking about Star Wars. That was his content. That was his bread and butter, right? But he made one April Fool's video called What If Anakin Liked Sand? And it's actually still pretty darn hilarious. So, that's great. He made that video, and it became super popular, and that's how a lot of people found his channel. That was his first big claim to fame, and how myself and a lot of other people, found out about his channel. But the thing is, over time, he's kind of just transitioned. And I see this a lot in YouTube comments where people talk about Star Wars Theory. People saying like, oh, I used to follow him, but I don't follow him anymore. His content's changed. And he's even talked about this recently in a couple of his videos, like, oh, I stopped complaining about how I changed, guys. I'm still the same. I didn't change. But the main thing is, he's changed more of, from just talking about Star Wars, in just general terms, about like, oh, what about this? So let's talk about this thing, It's more just become, let's talk about why the prequels are amazing masterpieces, and why everything that Disney does is absolute garbage, and why they're destroying Star Wars and George Lucas' legacy. Because, unfortunately, that content, where he's just being extremely hateful and just, promoting all of this anger towards Disney and all that, is very, very profitable. And that's the reason that his content has transitioned into this over the last couple of years. And you can see that. You can see that pretty much, you just scroll through any of his recent videos, it's all just going to be, oh, Disney is bad, they're ruining Star Wars, look at how great it could have been if we still had George Lucas, look at all this, It's all just that kind of content. And you see plenty of that on YouTube, sure. But the thing is, it's because Star Wars Theory is the biggest channel, that's the face of Star Wars on YouTube. That's like, when people look for YouTube content about Star Wars, unfortunately, one of the first things they're going to see is Star Wars Theory. They're going to see his videos, because he's the biggest channel. And they're going to see, oh, this is what Star Wars is on YouTube, just all hating on Disney? That's great. And people will start to think that's representative of the whole Star Wars fan base, which isn't true. It's really not. A lot of people have this misconception that, the whole Star Wars fan base hates the sequels. That's simply not true. Actually, a lot of people actually enjoy parts of Disney Star Wars, various parts of it. We don't all agree. We don't all think the same. I know, crazy idea, but some people don't get that idea. Another thing I see people say is that, his head got really big after he made his Star Wars fan film. I don't really think that's the case, though. I don't really think that's it. He did make a Star Wars fan film, which is just kind of weird, because the whole plot of it revolves around Vader going and fighting Mace Windu, who somehow survived getting his arm chopped off, electrocuted, and thrown out a window, when he also complains about Disney bringing back Palpatine. Like, what? Why? You're like, oh, it's so stupid they brought back Palpatine with no explanation. Dude, You're making a fan film where Mace Windu somehow survives with no explanation. What are you talking about? People will be like, oh, his ego is so inflated. I don't think that's the case. I don't really think that's the problem. But one thing I do want to point out is just seeing how much his merch has changed. I remember years and years ago watching one of his videos. I think it might have been the Anakin like Sand video. But I remember him showing off his merch, and it was cool. It was like Star Wars characters that were like like Qui-Gon Jinn and Pal Protein. Like really buff like gym stuff. I'm like, that's cool. It's like gym kind of culture mixed with Star Wars. It's a cool idea for merch. That's really great. But now all this stuff is just like the I Heart prequels. Like that's all of his new stuff. It's just I Heart prequels. And apparently he's come out with one saying like I Heart original trilogy now. But he's like, oh, I refuse to make one that says I love the sequels. Like he's not gonna make one. Like there's a clip of him, I couldn't find it, but there's a clip of him saying like, no, I'll never make that. I can make a lot of money off of it if I made that hat, but I'm never gonna make it. It's like, really, man? You're gonna make for 2 of the trilogy of Star Wars, but one you're just not gonna make just because screw it, because you're mad at it for existing. It's so ridiculous. It's like you could just make a hat that says I love Star Wars, and that would be broad appeal. Everyone would like it. But no, he's going to specifically make a hat that says, I love prequels, and I love original trilogy, just because screw you, sequel fans, I want your life to suck. Like, you see the point I'm getting at here? He's just promoting all this hate for no reason other than it, gets him more attention while all people are like, yeah, screw the sequels, yeah, we love Star Wars 3, he says the sequels suck, yeah. And that's just the problem, is because I think he's really just been forced down this path, because his content really transitioned in the last couple of years into just only sequel-y. And because of the way that YouTube works, I think it was almost him being forced into it. When you start to notice, when you get to a point in YouTube where you start to notice, this stuff gets a lot of views. This stuff doesn't really get a lot of views anymore. Maybe I should start focusing on the stuff that gets a lot of views. So I'm thinking that maybe that's what happened. His audience just, got, replaced by all these people who just wanted sequel hate content. I'm sure he had plenty of fans who, were just fine with whatever his older content, but they just kind of got pushed out by all the new fans of all this, yeah, the sequels suck. And again, the thing is, there's plenty of channels on YouTube that do this. There's plenty of channels, you can find at the bottom of the barrel who are just like, oh, Kathleen Kennedy ruined everything, blah, 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 blah. And like, there's plenty of those channels, and they all got their own communities, but all of them just being on the Star Wars Theory channel, and again, that being the face, if Star Wars Theory was just a small YouTuber, no one would care. No one would care about his dumb opinions about Star Wars, But because he's the face, because he's the #1 YouTube channel, I don't know if he's really the face of Star Wars YouTube, but he's the #1 in Star Wars YouTube. He's the biggest one. That's gonna have, that's a problem, right? That's gonna be, people are gonna see that. They're gonna see like, oh, is that what the Star Wars community is like? Just all this hate? And again, it doesn't look for us. It doesn't look good for us. The rest of us Star Wars fans who have to be like, yeah, we don't associate with that guy. Even though he's the biggest channel, we don't associate with him, okay? We have to distinguish ourselves, and it's just like, that's what upsets me. That's what upsets me about being a Star Wars YouTuber. I have to live with this guy. I gotta be like, yeah, I'm not with him. I'm not with stupid, alright? Please don't associate me with him. And of course, there are plenty of other clips of him saying stupid stuff. There's the bricks and screws incident. That's another one of the things that gripes me about him, is because I've seen so much praise for Andor. Almost every time I see someone say something good about Andor, it's not just like, I liked Andor because it was so fun. No, the reason people like Andor is complex characters, amazing cinematography, music. Just there's so much you can praise in Andor. You have some great, just stuff you don't get anywhere else in Star Wars, like Luthen's monologue. I always say it was like my favorite scene because it was amazing. You don't get stuff like that in other Star Wars, and it's amazing. But then you have people like Star Wars Theory. Almost every time I see someone say something bad about Andor, all they say is just, oh, it was boring. Like, that's your complaint? It was boring? Like, that's like saying, like, oh, I don't like classical music. It's boring. It's like, okay, sure, I'm not asking you to, like, listen to classical music, but you can at least, like, appreciate why it's good, right? You can appreciate why some of this music of, like, I don't know, I'm not a classical music nerd, but, like, people can recognize, like, yeah, that's good, but I'm not going to, like, listen to it, right? You can at least recognize, hey, this is good. You don't have to be like, oh, that's boring. That's dumb, and I didn't like it because it's boring. Okay, then it's not for you, but you can still recognize that it's good, right? So that's why I just don't I just don't like it when he's always like, oh, stupid Andor. And going back to that clip from the beginning, him being like, oh, it's for all these, it's people who want French hats. And that's what he's getting at, is he's trying to get that point of like, oh, it's trying to be all artsy and blah, 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 blah. And that's not what Star Wars is supposed to be. Star Wars is supposed to be cool and lightsabers and stuff. It's like, sure, Star Wars can be that. But the great thing about Star Wars, it can be so many different things. That's why I personally love Star Wars, is because it can reach so many different things. I can just have, woo, you know, swinging lightsabers around in Ahsoka. That's so fun, you know, woo. I love that. That's awesome. You know, that part of it. But if I want more depth story, I'm not going to go to Ahsoka. I'm going to go to Andor. That's where I have depth and story and interesting characters and thought-provoking stuff. That's what I love. And so it's just like, when he and a lot of other fans just write it off as, oh, it's boring. That's it. It's a boring show. You know, whatever. And the thing is, it sucks because he did even admit in that same video, like, oh, it was a good show. You know, I guess I kind of liked it, but it was boring. It's like, what?
Okay, don't get me wrong. I liked Andor. I liked it. It was a good show. It was fine. It was cozy. It was also extremely boring and made me fall asleep a million times.
I think I think what he's trying to get at here, at least what I kind of read this as, is he is able to recognize that Andor is a good show, but he just can't say it. He can't say that Andor is a good show. If he says, hey guys, I think Andor might actually be really good, and all the bad stuff I said about it might be kind of pointless, he's going to lose a bunch of fans. He's going to lose a bunch of viewers. They're going to be like, oh, he's turned into a Disney show now. I can't watch Star Wars Theory anymore, and they're going to leave. Because that's unfortunately just how those fans are. As soon as he, says, hey, I think The Last Jedi might be kind of a good movie, but it sucked. It was a bad Star Wars movie, guys. Don't leave. I'm just saying, it was kind of good, but it was a horrible Star Wars movie. It's still horrible. You guys all hate The Last Jedi.
The Last Jedi was the most asinine representation of a continuation of Luke Skywalker's story that I've ever seen in my life, yet it was a good movie. It just wasn't a good Star Wars movie.
I don't get it. It's like, he can see these things are good. He can see these things have some value. He could criticize them fairly and be like, hey, this thing has some good parts of it, but it also has some bad parts. He could make fair criticisms, but instead he just plays into the, oh, it's garbage, Disney ruined everything, Disney's awful, the doom and gloom, blah, 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 blah. Because that's just, unfortunately, what works best on YouTube. So, I don't know. If anything, I hope you learn from this video that the internet and YouTube is all just about, brah, in your face, it's awful, that's awful. Everything's just blown out of proportion. So, and unfortunately, Star Wars Theory, I think, is just kind of a victim of that. Again, not trying to say he's a victim here. He's a pretty terrible channel, with all the hate he promotes. But again, I think he's just a product of the modern day of YouTube, which is just kind of sad. And that's why I call this a tragedy, because it's still his fault. He's still the one wrong here, but it is a bit of a tragedy that's how Star Wars YouTube worked. It just morphed this channel into what it is today. So, he played into it, and, maybe he's richer for it, but, at what cost is what I ask. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on Star Wars Theory. I've had these thoughts for a while. I kind of just rambled in this video. Don't know if it was super cohesive, but I hope you enjoyed. I wanted to talk about it, and something I found important. So, yeah, that's Star Wars Theory for you. That's my thoughts on them. I don't know, maybe Star Wars Theory is going to be like, look at this stupid channel, IR Smart. I highly doubt that's going to happen. I'm pretty darn tiny. I don't think he cares about me. So anyway, this is it. Bye.